Okay, so in this video we're going to start looking at the plank or the slab for our Windsor chair.
Yes.
So we've got a bit of elm here. So how would you normally get hold of a plank in the UK?
The first way I did it, I googled air-dried hardwoods.
Yeah.
And it turned out that there was someone very near me, no longer with us anymore, but you'll get there through Google.
Yeah, great. So you're basically sourcing a supplier of hardwood planks.
Air-dried, ideally. Kiln-dried wood doesn't carve very well and isn't necessarily as dry as you'd think it is either. It's quite often just kiln-dried to reduce some weight for transport.
Right.
So you want to have it at relative humidity.
Okay, so we tend to be going to a yard and they'll have planks that look like this, probably 3 metre lengths.
Yep.
Is that normal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll be stacked up, either stacked with stickers, so they'll have these little sticks and then just stacked up on top of each other. Or you'll often have the ones that they want to sell, I guess, displayed, so just be vertical. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier that way. It can be tricky. Often sawmills be used to supplying big companies with lots of planks.
Yeah.
And it can be tricky to persuade them that you're worth spending some time over so that you can buy just one plank, which is a shame, but that is just the way that it goes. So it would tend to be a longer length than this. So if you're going with your car, then take a tape measure and a saw so you can saw it in half and pop it in the back.
Definitely.
And most trees for Windsor chairs, essentially the wood that you're getting is going to warp.
Yes.
Because as you can see, this is just a slice of a tree. And this is actually something that I think is covered quite well in the book. But it is worth just pointing out where we tend to get these slabs from in a tree. So you have a look at the book. So you can see this dotted line. That tends to be where you would get a large plank from. Often people would talk about quarter sawn planks, and that would be the bit between my thumbs, so from the pith outwards. And obviously that would be half of the diameter of the tree. So when we're looking for large boards, we tend to be getting it from this middle bit. And actually that's slightly stronger, right? If it's quarter sawn, it's going to be more prone to splitting than a board from the top of the log like that. There must be a way of saying that, but I don't know what it is. It can be more prone to cupping. So quarter sawn board would be more stable. And often you'll find, particularly if it hasn't been well stickered and seasoned in an optimal way, then you'll find that it may have some cupping. So you have actually got a board that does show that very nicely. So you probably want to err away from a board that's cupping that much.
Yeah, this board is very, very close to the central pith. I've drawn the growth rings on so you can see this is the bark side of the tree. When you select the wood, you want these to be as straight as possible. I've got two really small ones here, and I think that's what's caused most of the cupping in that. It's really is a spoilt board, that one.
The tighter the rings in it, the more likely you're going to have cupping in it. And this is probably cupped so much that to flatten that, you're not really going to get much wood out of it.
No, you're going to use half the wood.
Yeah. So, in the book, I think we explain quite well how to flatten a board.
Yep.
It's actually in the chopping board section. So the idea with the book is it kind of teaches you different skills along the way that should be useful in the long run. So do check out that part. Essentially, we're just using a scrub plane to kind of take the peaks off. And you tend to work on one side of the board and then the other. Okay, so let's have a look at this big board and think about where we would get the seat from. Obviously, this is something that Robin does a lot, and I don't spend very much time making chairs. So, what would you be looking at if you're like, right, I've got to make a chair? Which bit?
Well, when you work in greenwood, you'd often be avoiding knots, but knots in elm in particular make quite nice features. What I wouldn't want is that at the edge. So any of these slightly little burry parts here, you'd want them inside. Because if they're on the edge, they're just going to break away eventually.
Yeah, so knots are always hard work,
They are.
but they look pretty.
They do.
And actually on a chair seat, I suppose knotty, gnarly grain is less likely to split.
Yeah.
But
much.
then you wouldn't want it right on the edge because it would be a weakness.
Yeah, and it's going to beat your tools up as well. You try and chamfer that with your spoke shave and you're going to spend a lot of time at your sharpening
Right.
stones after.
Yeah. So don't have your knots right on the edge of the seat.
Yeah.
Which side of the plank would you have as the top of the seat?
Well-
Or doesn't it matter so much?
I prefer, it looks prettier. Same with carving spoons. If you're going from the bark side, you get to see the development of the growth rings as you go through.
Right, okay, so is that what we've done on this one?
We are on the bark side now, yes.
No,
On this one?
on our chair.
Yes. So if you go from the bark side down, you get this contour lines effect from the growth rings in the tree. And it just makes for a very pretty piece of wood.
It does look really nice actually.
'Cause for all its strength, elm is also beautiful wood to use.
Yeah, classic. Okay, so you want to be going from the bark side down because that's revealing these beautiful contour lines. Is there any other advantage to doing it that way up?
Yes, if you do get any cupping in the future, it's going to go into the seat shape rather than bringing up a mound in the middle of the seat. It's just more comfortable.
Right, so actually that's kind of same with a spoon, right? Like
Yeah.
if you do it one way, it's going to make the spoon slightly deeper.
Yeah.
If you have the grain orientated the other way, it's going to make the spoon shallower and shallower. Yeah. Okay. And then, so where do you have the front and the back of? Do you have the front and the back of the seat this way, or?
Now, the first chair we looked at that had got a fin on the back with two supporting spindles.
Yes.
You have to run the grain from front to back for one of those, otherwise you've got a short grain issue and you will snap the fin off.
Okay. Yeah.
If not, then it is completely up to you. I prefer to see it running this way. I think if your spindles are coming down, there's just, there's a flow to it.
Yes.
You've got it's all the other way around. Still, I mean, I do them that way. But if your board won't let you put it this way, but it will let you put it that way, do that.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
So you get it slightly prettier grain coming out of those kind of scallops for the thighs at the front.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it doesn't really matter.
No.
Unless you're doing a different style where you need to have that. Did you call it a fin off the back?
Yeah. Some tail piece, a fin. It's just it takes a lot of load, does that piece?
Yeah, it's quite small, so you need
Yeah.
the fibres running straight into that to hold
Yeah.
it in place.
Yeah. A couple of things worth noting. This is a fresh cut for us. You're going to get checking on cracks coming into planks as they dry out. If I had a crack coming 3 inches into there, I'd want to go at least another 3 inches after it. Cracks, the visible part of a crack tends not to be the end of the crack, does it?
Totally. Yeah, that's very worth pointing out.
Beware of cracks.
Yeah, because you'll often find basically the tree will be slabbed up and then let to dry, and you'll find that you get these often very big splits in the end. You tend to not have to pay for those bits. They shouldn't charge
a
you
good
for it.
person who's selling you that would normally measure from the visible end of a crack to the visible end of the crack at the other end.
And then they give you an
measure-
estimate of the volume in between,
They
basically.
measure halfway. Halfway along will be the width. So they'll do that times that times that.
Yeah, but just bear in mind what Robin was saying about the split. So however far you can see that split, it tends to run a few inches beyond it.
Yeah.
People do come unstuck with that.
They do. I'm happy for us to go quite close to the end of this because this has been cut since it was seasoned, hasn't it?
Yes,
This was
totally.
a much bigger board at one point.
So this is a board that's been sawn in half.
Yeah.
Okay, and as with all things, it is worth trying to get your materials right,
Yeah.
and don't push them to the limits on your first attempt. Experience is a very useful thing
It is.
when you're experimenting,
Yes.
and try and keep it simple if this is your first chair. Okay, so I suppose another thing worth pointing out is that because we're doing an armchair, you actually need a fairly sizable chunk of wood. I guess where you've got the kind of arm posts, they need to be outside of where your legs would be, and then they need a bit of structural wood either side so that they don't snap off.
Yeah.
So you do need a fairly chunky bit of wood for an armchair.
You do.
You wouldn't need anything like it if you were just making a stool.
Yeah.
Or a chair with just a back and no arms at all. You wouldn't need anything like as the same size. So that might be worth considering.
Yeah, and I think we should mention that we've got elm here. You don't have to use elm. Elm's expensive. There isn't as much around as there used to be. The tree I'd love to see milled up everywhere for this is conker.
Right.
Conker is, people don't use it, and it's wonderful for chair seats.
Great. So that's something that they use in America, right?
Yeah, buckeye.
Yeah.
The Americans call it.
So they use buckeye. They also use white pine, is it?
Eastern white pine it's called, and that's a really evenly grown, it's a very good strong tree is Eastern white pine. It's great wood.
And it is worth pointing out that in America their trees are much bigger.
Honestly.
In the UK that we do not have very many large trees anymore like that.
No, I joke.
Not ones that you're allowed to cut down.
No. I joke to my American friends that they're cheating using the trees that they use. It's just not fair.
Alas.
Alas.
However, we do have trees, so we
do.
You can use sycamore. You can use ash. What else do people use? Don't the Americans use poplar?
Yeah, tulip poplar. You could use Lombardy poplar.
Walnut. We have a walnut plank here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually not big enough for what we're doing. It's probably worth, actually, this is quite a good thing. It is worth checking out your planks. You can see on this one, actually, the sapwood is a tiny bit rotten. I don't know whether that would make too much of an impact, but I wouldn't want to put a joint into any of that sapwood. No. It is actually, if this was turned into a seat, it would be right on the edge. So,
a general rule with sapwood is use it if the tree hasn't laid on the ground. You use green sapwood, it's got exactly the same strength as the heartwood.
Yes.
It just doesn't have any of the rot resisting properties. So with a dried board, I would avoid sapwood.
Totally. Yeah. So sapwood often is poo-pooed. It can be awkward because sometimes it shrinks more and it's more prone to rotting because it's got the sugars in it and it doesn't have all the tannins that are trying to, the tree chucks a load of tannins into the wood that it's trying to stop rotting.
Yeah.
Anyway, walnut is a fantastic option. If you have a really nice big board of walnut, looks beautiful, easy to carve.
Find me, I'll have it.
Yeah. Great, so that's us sorted with planks. Now let's go and have a look at all the turned components for our chair.